These strange creatures feeding here at the Bronx Zoo came from a crocodile rehabilitation center in India. Only a few years ago, they were highly endangered, an ancient species close to extinction. Hi, I'm George Page for Nature. These fearsome-looking creatures are called Ganges Gharial. The ones here are about 6 feet long, but when fully grown, they can reach lengths of more than 20 feet. They're fish eaters and considered to be harmless to humans, though if molested, I'm sure those sharp teeth could cause a nasty wound. In truth, it's been the other way round. Man has been the gharial's only enemy. By 1972, he had hunted and killed so many of them for their skins that it's estimated fewer than 100 were left in the wild. In fact, by that point, there were none at all to be found in the Ganges, India's great river that originally gave them their name. The Ganges Gharial is one of the world's 21 crocodilian species, and some aspects of its behavior and habits had not been documented until our film, 5 years in the making, was completed. Fortunately for the gharial, it's a conservation story with a happy ending.
This film was made along 3 rivers in India, where man is helping the gharial attempt a comeback. There are now approximately 300 adults living wild. It is a struggle to prevent the extinction of their species. The long-snouted gharial has lived in the deeper pools of these fertile rivers for millions of years. Now it resides in sanctuaries created by man. The subcontinent of India has long been home to a great variety of wildlife, but hunting and the destruction of natural habitats has caused the decline of many species. Today in India, there is wide support for conservation based on a respect for wildlife that's deep-rooted in the country's culture and religions. India's national bird, the peacock, is one of many species protected by law. And now, much of the country's wildlife survives in the safety of national parks and sanctuaries. Including the peculiar-looking Gharial gangeticus, the only living member of the crocodilian family, Gavialidae. When mature, the male gharial grows a strange hump at the tip of its snout. It's for this hump that the animal was named. The hump is thought to resemble a pitcher, which is called gara in Hindi. The male gharial is the only crocodile to have it. Until recently, its exact function was a mystery to scientists. Unlike other crocodilians, which feed on a great range of prey, including mammals, the gharial feeds exclusively on fish. Its body is streamlined for propulsion. Its legs are relatively small and used as stabilizers. The peculiar jaws look strangely thin when compared to the solid, muscular body. But a thin snout moves through the water with less resistance, so that the gharial can catch even the fastest moving fish. To swallow their catch, they always return to the surface. The gharial's jaws have 108 sharp teeth, which are perfectly adapted for catching and manipulating fish. The catch is tossed into position before it's swallowed. Sometimes this takes several minutes. If gharials catch fish larger than they can swallow, they break them into smaller pieces, thrashing their heads from side to side above the water. Smaller fish go down in one piece, head first. From the time it evolved about 100 million years ago until the turn of this century, there were many gharials in India's Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers. And in central India, the Mahanadi, even in the Indus of Pakistan, the Padma of Bangladesh, and perhaps the Irrawaddy of Burma. The few wild gharials alive today are found in several protected sanctuaries, such as Corbett National Park. It's India's oldest nature reserve and lies in the foothills of the Himalayas. The Ramganga River runs through the park, its snow-fed waters chillingly cold throughout the year. Like all reptiles, gharials depend on external heat to raise their body temperatures, and basking in the sun is an important activity. They spend a long time checking to see that it's safe before leaving the water. Taking their cue from the first gharial to emerge, the others head for their favorite basking sites. In winter, they often spend the whole day basking if left undisturbed. In summer, just a few hours is enough to warm them up. Gharials are the most aquatic of the crocodilians, and because their front legs are poorly developed, this puts them at a great disadvantage on land. They never venture far from the water's edge, so that they can return quickly to safety if necessary. The old males are the last to come out of the water. They're extremely wary and are rarely seen basking. It's not known for sure how long gharials live. This one is thought to be at least 25 and might live to be 100. As the day warms up, turtles come out too. The gharials take short naps, but they're constantly listening for danger. On the Ramganga, river otters share the gharial's habitat and eat the same fish. Apparently, the playful otters are not afraid of gharials and sometimes entertain themselves at the crocodile's expense. The otters are more agile than the gharials and tease them by swimming round them just out of range. They even dare to bite the massive reptiles' tails. The gharial moves off to find another, more peaceful basking spot, and the otter rejoins its companions. While basking, the gharial often gapes its jaws, and scientists offer different explanations for this. Some say it's a form of communication. Others believe it may help the animal cool down. A more simple explanation is that gaping could be just a change from keeping their mouths shut. At the end of the day, the gharials return to the water. No doubt more gharials would have been alive today if they could have spent less time basking in the sun. It's while out of the water that they're most vulnerable. The gharial has been hunted for centuries. A page from Babar's memoirs depicting a gharial hunt of India's first Mughal emperor 400 years ago. More recently, large male gharials were the targets of big game and trophy hunters. A prince of the state of Orissa is said to have shot 100 gharials in a single day, just for target practice. But later, the increasing demand from the West for its skin, for handbags and shoes, nearly finished the gharial. By 1972, the gharial was almost extinct, and it was only then that the government of India stepped in and banned all gharial hunting and all trade in its skin. Since then, a total of 7 sanctuaries have been created for the last few animals. Even so, they're not always safe. Setkosha Gorge Sanctuary on the Mahanadi River in the state of Orissa. The Mahanadi is full of fish and an ideal home for the gharials. But it's also good fishing for the local people. To protect the gharials, the use of these large nets has been banned in the sanctuary. In the past, many gharials have become entangled and died in them. But the fishermen still use the nets illegally, and the wildlife protection guards wage an ongoing battle with them. They confiscate the nets and fine the offenders, but the whole thing is very difficult to police. In addition to the problems with fishermen, transportation of bamboo down the gorge also threatens the Gharial. The cheapest way to get bamboo to the paper mills is to raft it downstream, but it disturbs the shy Gharials. Even in the protected areas, it's hard for man and the Gharials to coexist. To the northwest of the Sedkosha Gorge in central India is the most important Gharial refuge of all, the National Chambal River Sanctuary. There are more than 300 miles of river, with a breeding population of about 60 Gharials. Not very large by any standard, but it's the largest in India and indeed the world. Breeding begins at the end of winter. Dominant males form harems of 3 or 4 females. There are so few Gharials that in their eagerness to mate, the females sometimes approach other females by mistake. The male advertises his presence loudly. He emits a combination of whistles and hisses that are amplified by his curious nasal hump, the hump's only apparent function. A responsive female approaches the male, raises her snout beside him, and replies with softer calls. The bubbling of air further confirms their acceptance of each other. Surfacing and submerging, the partners swim side by side toward shallow water. When the female is touching the riverbed, the male can mount her. He must be very careful to make the right moves, for if he makes a mistake, the female will desert him immediately, even at the last moment. The male is unsuccessful. Seeing another female approaching, he decides to court her instead. To encourage her, he claps his jaws. These jaw claps are clearly audible above the surface, even though they're actually made underwater. After several attempts, the male gets a secure hold on the female. The pair will then go down into deep water to mate. A month after mating, the females climb onto the riverbank to find a suitable nesting site. This is when they make their longest journeys on land, wandering about 30 feet from the water. No one has ever filmed a female gharial prospecting for a nest site before, let alone laying her eggs. It took filmmaker Nareesh Bedi and his team 3 years to film this event. The first 2 years, they missed it altogether. And the third year, there were days of endless waiting. One day, at dusk, a female crawled up to the bank toward the film crew. It seemed she was ready to lay her eggs. The female started digging her nest with her hind legs in the torrential rain, but the filming came to an abrupt halt. The camera lights on the riverbank had failed in the downpour. A scorpion crawled into the hide to shelter from the storm. The crew continued with their work. A tape recording of croaking frogs was switched on to cover any accidental sound that might scare the nesting female back to the water. The camera lights were restored, and then, out in the darkness, the female was finishing her digging. It has taken her 3 hours to excavate her nest. Then she begins to lay her eggs, each at intervals of 1.5 minutes. She keeps her legs inside the nest to prevent the eggs from falling too heavily on the ones already laid. For her, egg laying is a tiring process. After 45 minutes, she's exhausted and almost unable to force out her 23rd and last egg. But she soon begins the laborious process of filling in the nest to cover the eggs. It was almost 300 million years ago that reptiles developed an egg with a shell which could be incubated out of water. This enabled them to conquer the land, and then they dominated it for 200 million years. Crocodiles are an aquatic leftover from the time when reptiles ruled the world, the age of the dinosaurs. The female gharial uses the weight of her body to compact the sand covering the eggs. This trampling motion may be the same instinctive movement that dinosaurs used to bury their eggs. To conceal all traces of the nest, she moves to several different positions and throws on more sand. It has taken her a full 10 hours to complete nesting, and her work is by no means over. During the next few weeks, she will keep an increasingly anxious watch on her eggs to protect them from predators. The next morning, she's still by her nest. At this stage, the scent of the mucus made while she was laying the eggs is strong and easily detected by animals like jackals and monitor lizards. Gharials have to be highly vigilant. Farther up the Chambal River, in a very remote area, a team of Forest Department rangers looks for more gharial nesting sites. In this wild region, the camera team had to be protected by armed guards. The ravines which border this river are terrorized by bandits, notorious for kidnapping and murdering people. Since 1974, the government of India has joined forces with international organizations to conserve the almost extinct gharial. In a joint project, gharial eggs are collected for hatching in captivity. Many of those employed for the project are local boatmen, people who in the past have probably killed hundreds of gharials and eaten many of their eggs. But now they've changed sides and are helping the conservationists.
नीचे तो बहुत मोटा रेत है। नीचे तो मोटा है। रेत बहुत गर्म हो गया है। ये गड्ढा खोदा है। ये वाला है।
The nest cavity can be located by probing into the sand with a blunt steel rod.
ज़्यादा तार मंडल बहुत इधर है। यार मालूम तो देता। निकाल जाओ राउंड के बाद।
This year, the team found 3 nests at this site. Many facts are still being uncovered about gharial breeding habits. For example, a female gharial buries her eggs a foot below the surface and for a good reason. Even when the surface of the sand becomes scorchingly hot, the eggs below remain at a uniform temperature of about 90 degrees. They mark the eggs carefully. It's vital that the red spot remains up during transport. If reptile eggs roll over during incubation, the membranes inside are damaged and the embryos become deformed. There can be up to 100 eggs in each nest, depending on the age and size of the female.
27.
Each weighs about 6 ounces, and they're 3 times the size of a chicken's egg.
Live. Live.
Normally, nesting sites are on high sandbanks like this one. They are traditional and probably used by many generations of gharials. High up, the nests are protected from being washed away by floods. For transport, a covering of moist sand is added, and then they're loaded into the boats. River transport is the only way to get the eggs to the hatchery. There are no roads here. When a favorable wind blows, the boats make good headway against the current. But when the wind dies, the boats have to be pulled along by hand. It may take 24 hours to get the gharial eggs out of this area. It's important to get away because the monsoons are on the way. Anticipating the rains, the male weaver birds begin making their nests. They are compactly woven out of grass and strips of leaves taken from the rice paddies. They're very elaborate structures. Down in the river below, a male gharial keeps a close watch on the spot where his female laid the eggs a month ago. While the eggs are incubating, the female seems totally preoccupied with their safety. At this stage, she neither eats nor sleeps for long. After sunset, she comes ashore and lies about 10 feet from the nest, apparently guarding the eggs and waiting for them to hatch. After 70 days of incubation, the baby gharials under the sand break their eggshells and begin to call. Responding to their calls, the female begins to dig out her babies. Meanwhile, the male has come out of the water and moved up beside her. But this is much too close for her comfort, and she tries to head him off. Digging out the young is her job. It would seem that he wants to catch a glimpse of the newborn young and pushes closer. But they're still buried. With the male in the way, she'll never finish the job of digging out her young before daybreak. So she prods him away. Eventually, he'll move back and wait behind her. Responding to the vibrations produced by their mother's digging, the clutch begins croaking in chorus. It's time to get the young out of the nest. An hour later, a third gharial appears. It's a younger female. She's very curious. Hesitantly, she moves toward the older mother. Perhaps she's trying to learn something about the hatching process, though scientists are not sure what her motives are. The mother has partially excavated the nest and is trying to judge how close she is dug to her young. The junior female is rebuked for venturing too close. The mother digs and rests over and over again. Apparently, the male's desire to be with the young is so strong that despite the difficulty of moving his massive bulk, more than 1,000 pounds, he approaches the nest again. Until now, it was not known that the male and other gharials were present at this critical time, or even that the mother came to dig out her young. She's irritable now and makes it quite clear that no one is welcome. She turns sideways to see the progress of her work. Because a gharial's eyes are on the top of its head, it can't see what's going on directly underneath. The younger female keeps her distance. The sand has been cleared away from above the eggs, and the hatching can proceed. The baby gharials break the shell with an egg tooth on their snout. When their protruding nostrils get the first breath of air, at last they have the energy to break out completely. The weaker hatchlings are exhausted by the effort and must rest. To emerge from the eggs, they pull with their front feet and then straighten their curled bodies out of the shell. The mother watches quietly. Then she gently scrapes out both the hatchlings and the outer shells. The newborn gharials are 12 to 16 inches long and weigh about 3 ounces. Many crocodile species carry their young to the water in their mouths, but gharials cannot do this. Their teeth are too sharp. At one time, people thought gharials carried their young on their backs to the water, but that was not true in this case. The female excavated the nest in such a way that the hatchlings could climb out of it and walk down to the water themselves. The mother waits until she cannot hear any more hatchlings croaking in the nest. If one is trapped beneath the sand, she'll go and dig it up. The hatching has taken more than 10 hours. By the time it's over, it's daybreak. The young are in the water. For 2 weeks, they're sustained by the yolk in their stomachs. They can't swim for long and like to climb out of the water often. There's no resting platform which is safer or more willing than the floating bodies of their parents. A little later, the mother returns to the nest site. One of her babies has not made it to the water. It was crushed by mistake when she was opening the nest. The male takes care of the youngsters while the female is out on the bank. When it comes to parental care, the gharial is an amazingly gentle animal. But no amount of coaxing from its mother will bring this hatchling back to life. Soon she returns to the water. Assisted by the male, she does her best to keep predators away from her hatchlings. No bird of prey, fish, jackal, or turtle will dare approach with the parents around. Gharials are even suspicious of their own kind. When the Indian monsoon season reaches its height, the young gharials are only a few weeks old. The river swirls into rushing, muddy torrents, sweeping baby gharials away from their parents. For many, life lasts less than a month. It's estimated that only 1% of the hatchlings born survive the initial struggle for existence. Many Indian rivers flood disastrously during the monsoon because so much of the forests have been cut down. The bare hillsides have no ability to hold the water. It just floods down in one giant rush. This man-made ecological imbalance brings destruction not only to the gharials, but to the people too. With helicopters, it's easier to help people than gharials. But for both species, the results are tragic. "600 miles away from the disaster, a gharial rescue operation is in progress at the Gharial Rehabilitation Center. The gharial eggs collected earlier from the Chambal River have now hatched. More than 4,000 gharials have been hatched in captivity since 1975, when the project was launched. The results are encouraging. 45% have been reared successfully. But in this artificial environment, there are problems. The center's staff finds it difficult to get enough fresh fish. And when it does, some little gharials get sick by overstuffing themselves because of the irregular feedings. Then, veterinary help has to be given. This youngster is given medicine to help it digest its food. Others refuse to eat and have to be force-fed for a few days.
बहुत भूखे हो बंद करके सकला दो इसको पेट में उतर धीरे से साथ को खोलो और खोलो.
These are 4 years old. They've reached an average length of 5 feet and are ready to take care of themselves. But first, they have to be captured for their journey to the release site. One of the crest scales on their tails is cut as a mark of identification. This does no harm and will help biologists to study the gharial's progress after release. Finally, they're packed away for the bumpy ride, which can last up to 8 hours. Their destination, the Chambal River.
चलो 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 जरा यही बगल पर खड़े हो जाओ चलो चलो धीरे धीरे चलो धीरे छोड़ दे दूसरी उठाओ चलो ऐसे पूरा हो जाता हो.
The young gharials will soon be free to swim in the Chambal's blue waters. It's close to this very spot that they were taken as eggs 4 years ago. The gharials still have to face all the pressures of an ever-increasing human population along the life-giving rivers of India. Some conservationists maintain the restocking program has saved them from extinction. More conservative experts say it will be at least another decade before we know if modern man and the ancient gharial can coexist.
Nature is made possible by public television stations, your gas company, and America's gas industry, developing new sources of gas energy and ways to use gas more efficiently for more than 160 million people across America.
Stay with 11 now as live-action sequences and animation techniques give you a look at medieval life on Castle, a one-hour documentary hosted by author David Macaulay, next at 8.